Shiraishi is a teenager with such a faint presence that most people barely register he exists. He often has to remind others he's standing right in front of them, and he has accepted that he feels like a background character in his own life. The only people who notice him easily are his family and his classmate Kubo, who is beautiful, popular, and very aware of him. Kubo enjoys teasing him, but she's genuinely intrigued by how unnoticeable he is. She often tests the limits of his invisibility, even discovering that no one in class realized she was sitting on his lap. Shiraishi isn't sure whether Kubo is being friendly, messing with him, or simply entertaining herself at his expense. Kubo tries to get Shiraishi's phone number, but her friends interrupt before she can finish because they didn't notice he was there. Later that weekend, she spots him in the park and tries to take a selfie with him, only to find that her camera can't detect his face. She ends up having to press close to him again just to make the photo work. Afterward, she finally gets his number. Shiraishi, who isn't used to texting anyone, is surprised when Kubo immediately asks if they can hang out sometime. Meanwhile, Kubo's older sister instantly notices that Kubo is in a good mood about something. After their workout, Kubo hands Shiraishi a scented towel and quietly melts at the idea that they now share the same smell. Later, when Shiraishi goes out to buy manga, the automatic door refuses to register his presence. Kubo happens to walk by, finds his annoyance cute, and opens it for him. When she spots the series he's buying, she asks to borrow it. After he brings the books out, she realizes they live only 5 minutes apart and announces they should walk to school together from now on. The next morning, Kubo's older sister, Akina, immediately notices Kubo is wearing perfume, teases her about having a crush, and wishes her luck. Kubo is a little let down when Shiraishi doesn't comment on the scent. Later, Kubo meets her friends Hazuki and Tama, who completely miss Shiraishi's presence until she directs their attention to him. On the way to school, a passing car splashes Shiraishi with puddle water, forcing him to head home for a shower. After discovering he forgot his key, Kubo brings him to her house to clean up and lends him her gym tracksuit. Shiraishi accepts, flustered, and Kubo turns bright red when he accidentally sees her bra mixed in with the laundry. On the walk home afterward, Shiraishi can't stop thinking about the fact that he's wearing Kubo's clothes. Kubo finds out Shiraishi is only an inch taller than her and immediately pokes fun at him, reminding him that most couples have the guy towering at least 6 inches higher. Later, she spots him at the park with his little brother, Seita. Seita insists everyone share the same drink, and while Kubo humors him, she also catches Shiraishi faking his sip because he's shy about the indirect kiss. Shiraishi later wants a manga poster, but the magazine it comes in has a bikini model on the cover. He's mortified. Akina, who works at the shop, rings him up without realizing he's Kubo's friend. Shiraishi is stunned she can actually see him. After he leaves, Akina notices he dropped his student ID and hands it to Kubo, casually mentioning he bought a magazine full of giant breast imagery. Kubo, who's not exactly built like that, awkwardly asks Shiraishi if that's his preference, then hides her flustered moment behind teasing. When Christmas Eve comes around, Kubo arranges a little shopping date. She surprises Shiraishi with a present, sending him into a mild panic as he rushes off to buy her something too. He settles on gloves that perfectly match her outfit. Kubo, meanwhile, is shy about her own gift, a bright yellow main character t-shirt designed to make him easier to spot. Kubo manages to catch Shiraishi on camera goofing around with Seita, and he basically wants to evaporate on the spot. The next day, he shows up to school wearing mismatched socks, something only Kubo is sharp enough to notice. He spots that she's wearing tights, and she immediately teases him for staring at her legs like he's witnessing forbidden lore. After school, she drags him to try a fancy, overly complicated drink. She claims she needs him there so she doesn't mess up the order, even though she clearly just wants to hang out. She offers to share it with him, but he refuses because, again, the dreaded indirect kiss. So Kubo casually takes a bite out of his snack instead, basically creating an indirect kiss for him and strolling off. Before he can even begin to process it, someone bumps into him and the snack goes flying. Valentine's Day rolls around and Shiraishi doesn't bother caring because girls don't even realize he exists. Then he finds a chocolate heart in his desk. His first thought is that it was placed there by accident. He considers whether Kubo might have done it, but she plays it cool and says it was probably from a secret admirer. Now he's stuck wondering. Meanwhile, Kubo had spent the entire night wrestling with her terrible baking skills to make that heart, even asking Akina for help while fully knowing she would get roasted for it. Shiraishi eats the chocolate and loves it, still completely clueless about who made it. Shiraishi normally eats his lunch in total solitude, like a ghost haunting the school courtyard. But Kubo plops down beside him as if it's the most natural thing ever. She suggests they share lunches. He dodges her attempt to feed him, but he cannot escape feeding her, and she lights up like she just won the romantic lottery. She announces she'll cook something special next time. Hazuki and Tama observe all this and reach the extremely obvious conclusion. Kubo is crushing hard. Tama is baffled because she still sees Shiraishi as the human equivalent of a faint Wi-Fi signal. But Kubo snaps back that Tama doesn't know the real boy hiding under all that invisibility. The girls quietly realize this might not be a crush anymore. It might be the full love arc, and Kubo hasn't even clocked it herself. The next morning, Shiraishi comes early to school, trying to reset his life choices, only to discover Kubo still beat him there. They end up sharing his chair, shoulder to shoulder, listening to each other's playlists like two characters trapped in a coming-of-age AMV. Kubo, noticing his devotion to manga, watches his favorite anime movie at home. Akina witnesses this and just smirks, fully understanding the disaster her sister is falling into. White Day arrives. Shiraishi buys chocolates, but he's stuck because he still has no clue who his secret admirer is. He hands the gift to Kubo and asks her to give it to the mystery girl. Kubo teases him relentlessly, dropping hints sharp enough to cut paper, but vague enough to confuse him further. Shiraishi is left standing there, drowning in uncertainty, while she walks away knowing full well she's the admirer he's trying to find. A little girl suddenly spots Shiraishi on the street, and he practically short-circuits because strangers never notice him. Turns out she's Saki, Akina's cousin, which is when Shiraishi finally realizes the shop clerk who sold him that magazine with the bikini model on the cover is actually Kubo's sister. Akina wastes no time teasing him and even swaps phone numbers with him like it's nothing. Shiraishi starts wondering if seeing him is some kind of weird genetic superpower in Kubo's family. Akina goes home armed with fresh ammunition to bother Kubo. Meanwhile, exams are coming up, and Shiraishi's mom threatens to confiscate his games if he bombs them. Kubo jumps in to help him study, and unexpectedly, she turns out to be an absolute beast of a tutor. The next day, Shiraishi wakes up with a fever and stays home. Nobody at school notices he's missing except Kubo. She texts him, but Seda gets his phone first and replies with an "I miss you" emoji. Shiraishi scrambles to explain, so Kubo fires back with a "lonely without you" emoji and claims it was sent by Akina, even though that's obviously a lie. The following morning, Shiraishi shows up late, only to run into Kubo in the hallway, burning up with her own fever. He helps her to the infirmary, where she holds his hand until she falls asleep. For the first time in his whole existence, Shiraishi feels like he isn't a background NPC anymore. He feels like he might actually be the protagonist of his own story. Shiraishi manages to scrape through his exams, mostly because Kubo basically turned into his personal academic guardian angel. But the relief doesn't last long, because the year is ending and class groups are about to be shuffled. There's a real chance he and Kubo won't end up together next year, and the thought hits them both harder than either wants to admit. It's raining that afternoon, and Kubo pulls one of her classic moves. She convinces him to share an umbrella under the excuse of testing visibility. Shiraishi has the sinking suspicion she just wanted to walk with him, and honestly, he's probably right. Akina spots them on the street, but for once, decides not to tease Kubo. Even she can tell this moment is a little too genuine to poke fun at. Over the weekend, Shiraishi finds Saki struggling with a mountain of groceries and steps in to help. She's making dinner for Akina and Kubo. Curious about how close he and Kubo really are, Saki has Shiraishi say Kubo's first name, Nagisa, and Kubo's reaction gives everything away. Saki concludes these two are way past just classmates. Back at school, Shiraishi loses the tiny spring from his pen, so Kubo hands him a rabbit-themed pen identical to hers. When he actually uses it, she smiles like she just won something. Later, during a sleepover, Kubo hangs out with Tama and Hazuki. They talk about the upcoming class shuffle and realize that if they don't end up together, they'll lose shared trips, events, and everyday moments. The mood drops instantly. They notice that Kubo looks genuinely bothered, and it's clear why. The idea of being separated from Shiraishi isn't just sad for her. It's a quiet heartbreak she wasn't ready to confront yet. Shiraishi and Seda run into Kubo, Saki, and Akina while they're out shopping. Seda instantly falls under Saki's spell, staring at her like she's a rare Pokemon. Akina teases everyone, then casually invites the boys to a flower viewing picnic the next day. Before the picnic, Kubo decides she is to bring something she made herself for Shiraishi. The problem is her cooking is still a biological hazard, so Saki steps in to help, even though she pretends she can't stand Shiraishi. Kubo manages to cut her finger almost immediately, so Saki takes over again, but Akina encourages Kubo to try once more. This time she actually succeeds, making perfect Hamburg steaks. It's a huge win for her pride. At the picnic, Seda eats everything Saki made like an overexcited judge from a cooking show. Kubo makes sure Shiraishi gets one of the steaks she worked so hard on, and when he says it's amazing, she lights up. Akina, however, gets drunk in record time and starts teasing Shiraishi about marriage before literally shoving her chest into his face. Kubo storms off, furious. Seda demands Shiraishi fix things, so he goes to apologize, but Kubo stays upset. She knows it wasn't his fault, yet she's still annoyed and doesn't even know why. Seda ends up telling her to fix it. When she sees how miserable Shiraishi looks, she apologizes too. Shiraishi admits she confuses him constantly, and that honesty makes her weirdly happy. Then she asks him if he'd want to be in her class next year. He's so shocked he forgets how to breathe for a moment. Second year kicks off, and Shiraishi discovers he and Kubo are in the same class. Again. And not only that, they're assigned seats right next to each other. Hazuki and Tama land nearby too, basically recreating last year's setup with slightly more chaos. For once, Shiraishi actually feels excited about what's coming. He joins the environmental committee again, admitting to Kubo that even though no one ever noticed him tending the flowers, he likes seeing people admire them. Kubo immediately signs up as well. During class, she notices their new classmate Sudo actually remembers being on the committee with Shiraishi last year, which is rare, very rare, so she ropes Shiraishi and Sudo into the same science group. Turns out Sudo spent all of first year trying to talk to Shiraishi, but literally never spotted him once. Thanks to Kubo, the two finally get to talk properly, and Shiraishi genuinely enjoys it. He thanks Kubo for bringing him into the conversation, and the compliment flusters her way more than she expected. On their walk home, Shiraishi casually mentions that he considers them friends now. Kubo gets annoyed because from her perspective, they've obviously been friends forever. But even in her frustration, she can't help being happy he finally said it. Shiraishi loses a staring contest to Kubo, and his punishment is simple but terrifying. He has to greet her first thing in the morning. For him, this is basically a heroic quest. Later in class, his classmates accidentally blast him with chalk dust like he's a haunted eraser. Kubo steps in, brushing the chalk out of his hair, and then corners him until he admits he likes girls with ponytails. She stores that information like treasure. She notices he's grown a bit taller and drags him to a wall to compare their heights. When she steps close, they end up in a classic wall slam pose straight out of a romance manga. Shiraishi panics and bolts. What he doesn't see is Kubo practically collapsing afterward because she got just as flustered. The next morning, Shiraishi actually follows through and greets her first, and it makes her brighten instantly. Before their physical exams, Kubo borrows his tracksuit jacket for no reason he can figure out. Turns out it's a trend for girls to wear their boyfriend's jackets, but she's not about to explain that. During the exam, he's grown 3 centimeters, while Kubo hasn't grown at all, which annoys her a little. Meanwhile, Shiraishi secretly tails Seda on the kid's first solo mission to buy eggs. Akina spots him and is reminded of Kubo's own first errand, which also involved eggs. When Seda makes it home safe, Akina remembers how Kubo once dropped her eggs and cried until Akina stroked her head. She hints to Shiraishi that the trick still works. If Kubo ever cries, a gentle head pat will calm her instantly.